in for another week 14 recap. We go through every game that transpired around the NFL in week 14, give the infamous bottom five according to the Brickyard. You're not going to want to miss that at the end of the show, previewing every game and giving our thoughts. But outside of the NFL and outside of the world that we live in, there's investments that people decide to make. And some investments are better than others. And some people, in case you were watching the news recently, decided to invest in the Hawk Tua coin. And obviously, if you're not an idiot, you realize, well, maybe we shouldn't buy this coin. Maybe this is a really stupid purchase. But we have to remember that there are a lot of stupid people in the world who thought that was a great investment. So, for those who might have missed it, Haley Welch, aka the Hawk Tua girl, who's been fucking everywhere this whole year. Talking about the year of Haley Welch, aka the Hawk Tua girl. She decided to get in on the latest crypto craze and launch a Hawk Tua coin. And within hours, was worth nothing. Who would have thought? A meme that's been dead for 6 months, the meme coin that was created with it just absolutely plummeted. So the Hawk Tua girl is now in deep hot water because she fucking scammed people and the fucking meme coin rug pulled. Who would have thought to start the show?
Yeah. She's in hawk water, you could say. And the people who are out here, like, I just don't understand Haley Welch. Like, I invested in your coin and I need to, like, take legal action against you to understand what went wrong. And, like, no, 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 you're just a idiot. And if you invested in this coin, there are certain things that are just a societal and social test. One of them was, do you think a old man who just almost died and had surgery could come in and then beat Jake Paul, who's in his prime? If you did, just because it was Mike Tyson, then you probably should not talk about sports in any way, should not talk about fitness, and you do not understand how the human body works. And then you're also coming out here like, oh, well, I bought this coin and now I'm broke. Like, yes, if you buy this, you deserve to be broke. Like, there's a point where you have to stop and think, it's like, okay, anything you invest in, you have to understand you're probably going to lose most of your money. But people are throwing thousands of dollars into this, like, oh my God, I can't believe it broke. And then she just laughed at you, took your $50 million. It's like, okay, yeah, if you have people dumb enough to invest in something with no utility that's just a meme, it's like, obviously this is just going to be a quick pump and dump. She made $50 million off of this and now people are upset. Like, no, like, honestly, you should have just shorted it when it first came out. Like, oh yeah, that's gonna dump. Why don't I go ahead and short that? Oh, you don't know what that means? Another reason why you shouldn't invest in it.
The funniest thing to me is after she rug pulled everybody, her responses when she went back out onto the internet was telling everybody who invested their life savings to go to bed. They say go to bed. I saw one comment. This guy invested 35,000 his entire life savings into this
What?
coin. Yes, he invested his entire life savings. It went from 35,000 to 7. I'm like, yeah. To me, that's called natural selection. You're an idiot and sometimes natural selection plays its course and for dumb people, dumb things happen to them, just like this situation here. So, don't be an idiot. That's basically the message to start the show.
No, it's literally like the Grinch, the Jim Carrey one, and he's just yelling things, and he's hoping the mountain to catch the mountain, and he's just like, "I'm an idiot," and the mountain just screams back at him, "You're an idiot! You're an idiot!" Like, yeah, like you should expect to lose all of your money, and if you're like expecting to make any money of this, like, you're just a fool at this point. I don't know what you expected, and the fact that she just told people like, "Go to bed," like, yeah, go to bed, cry because you invested in a scam. It's obviously something she was just using for a quick cash grab. And is she going to go to jail for this? Probably not. A slap on the wrist, like, ooh, $10 million fine. I still made $50 million. Oh, well, so scary.
I think she'll be just fine. They're not going to put her in jail. America's
No.
sweetheart, they could never. Some people don't deserve to go to jail, just like my jersey didn't deserve to go to jail, but here we are. for those who don't know, my Christmas gift came in. If you're a fan of the show, you know that we do our yearly jersey swaps, and this year I got a freaking. I don't even know if it showed. I don't think it showed the Simpson part, but that's okay. Orenthal James Simpson signed USC jersey. Maybe the hardest jersey I could have possibly gotten for Christmas.
The USC is crazy. But yeah, that was funny. You're like, oh, I think I'm getting sweatpants. And it was just the man himself.
I got
The
Black
reason
Friday
why you
shopping.
can't buy a white Bronco.
I got some Black Friday shopping done, and I was like, oh, my Black Friday gifts are coming in. And then next thing you know, it's a fucking OJ signed jersey. I'm like, damn. I feel like I need a. The gift that's going your way is a good one, but damn, I don't think it tops OJ.
No, it's hard to.
I don't think anything tops OJ. But speaking of OJ, speaking of on the run, the NFL, week 14, we had some great games. We had some horrible games, but were any of them as bad as the Simpsons broadcast, which I think would be a good game to start with? The Bengals and Cowboys. And honestly, on the surface, this is genius. This is a genius play by the NFL. They have two teams that beginning of the season were like this was like a great Monday night matchup. We had the Bengals who were contenders in the AFC, the Cowboys who in some eyes were the contenders in the NFC. Both teams suck. One of them, their offense is great, but their defense is pathetic, and the other one, just all around, is pathetic in the Cowboys. And because this game ended up being a lot worse, they're like, you know what? Let's put Bart Simpson out there. Let's get Ralph Wiggum. Let's get Lisa and Maggie and Marge, and let's go ahead and make this a game. And what a game it was.
I mean, was it better than the Toy Story broadcast?
Yeah.
Like, how are we? How are we at a point where it looks like a Wii U game? It looks like if you played like Simpsons Madden is what it looks like on the Wii, where you just have to like flick the ball the right way on the Wii, and if you don't, you're gonna throw an interception or throw the ball backwards, or you're just gonna drop it when you go to flick it on Wii there. But yeah, the Simpsons broadcast was nightmarish. It kind of made me nauseous with some of the camera movement. Not gonna lie. But yeah, I turned it on for a couple minutes. Like, there's no way I'm gonna watch this at all. Like the Toy Story broadcast, it was London, so I was like half asleep when it was on. Just like put the game on to wake up in the morning when they did the Toy Story broadcast, but this one was just like, oh god. And it was like with the commentators too, it was like as soon as I saw Dan Orlovsky, I'm like, yeah, Dan Orlovsky deserves this for that 0-16 season, just with his heinous takes on ESPN, and now he has to be on the Simpsons broadcast and be like, "Oh, Bart Simpson and Lisa caught the ball here." I'm like, "No, this is a humiliation ritual by ESPN for anyone who had to participate in this broadcast."
The thing about this broadcast I think that killed me the most is that for some people, there were fantasy implications involved in this game, whether it was Jamar Chase or Joe Burrow or any of the other guys that you have on your team. And they refused to tell the audience in the broadcast who scored. Because in the game, if you watch the broadcast, you see this huge run by Lisa Simpson. You don't know that it's Chase Brown. You see this great catch by Ralph Wiggum. You don't know that it's Jamar Chase. And that's to me was the thing that frustrated me the most. And then not only that, on the other side, you see fucking Marge catch a touchdown. It's CeeDee Lamb. And they refuse to tell you who is who. You don't say who's Bart, who's Lisa. No, it's just that's who it is. It's the alternate cast. And that's what killed me the most. Not only that, there were certain shots that just we didn't get to see any of it. Whether it was a first down that was just on the opposite side of the field we just couldn't see. It was a mess. It was a complete mess. Good idea, I guess, but just bad. Just a bad just broadcast to watch.
Yeah, it was cool for kids, but thankfully they had the real broadcast on, which I watched most of for this game.
Hmm. You're a lucky man. The game, I mean, the
Did
game
it
itself was great. It was
How
a
did
fun game
the
to watch.
like muffed block punt look on the Simpsons broadcast. Like, did they even catch that?
No, they didn't. It was a nightmare because they you look like figurines, right? They look like you kind of described it well. It was like a Simpsons hit and run meets Madden. And keep in mind, Simpsons hit and run came out in 2002, so it kind of looked like that. And it's just a bunch of it was just a mess, to be completely honest. You're like, I don't know what's happening right now, but the game itself, like the game was great, right? Joe Burrow did what Joe Burrow does. Jamar Chase had a huge game again. Um, and even the Cowboys on the other side, like Cooper Rush has actually been pretty decent for the Cowboys and replaced for Dak. And the game was close. It came down to a muff punt and then a Jamar Chase touchdown. But overall, the game was like it was a great game, a great Monday night game to watch.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was the battle of two teams that were supposed to be relevant this year. We didn't actually think the Cowboys would be relevant this year, but we still believed in the Bengals. And, the better team, I guess, won in the situation. I picked the Cowboys, just hoping the Bengals would win, but was just so over it. They had lost to Cooper Rush the last time they played him. And, the Cooper Rush with the Cowboys has been real. Like, he has a solid record. I believe he's 10-3 now, 10-4 as the Dallas Cowboys starter. He knows how to use Rico Doidle, CeeDee Lamb here, and there's really not too much of a difference in Cooper Rush playing and Dak Prescott playing this year. And the Dallas Cowboys have looked more like a cohesive unit, but the Bengals were able to come up, get a ridiculous play from the Cowboys, whereas a situation where the Cowboys probably should have won this game, but how do you muff a blocked punt? And the worry for Cowboys fans with this game is it looks like we're going to win. And now Mike McCarthy is going to be heading into the offseason on a little bit of a hot streak here. We're going to have Dak Prescott being injured as an excuse here. Micah Parsons was banged up. Now he's healthy. Our defense looks better again, even though we still got cooked by the Bengals. But hey, we only gave up 27 points instead of 37 points to the Bengals. So we can hang our hat there. But Bengals get it done. You stay kind of alive in the wild card hunt. It's still a long shot. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but hey, you have to stay alive. You have to hope. Crazier things have happened before, but with the Cowboys, what did you just think of that play happening? And then you just see Micah Parsons throwing a tantrum on the sideline.
It's poetic for me. It signifies the Cowboys season. Even on their highlights, there are lowlights. And in that part, you muff a punt and give the ball back to the Bengals with a minute left with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on the other side. A team like the Cowboys are in a much different situation than the Bengals. Like that NFC playoff situation, I feel like is a lot more favorable to the Cowboys, especially look at the rest of their schedule. They still have some games that are winnable if you're not the Cowboys. And so like I feel like that was the end of the season for the Cowboys, which I don't think is crazy to say, but they had the game in their hand. They've been on somewhat of a hot streak, right? They beat the Commanders, they beat the Giants, and they almost beat the Bengals, which could have been three straight wins. You're looking at 6-7, and in the NFC, like that's good enough to at least be in contention for the next couple of weeks. But instead, they just piss their pants. They lose the ball. They give it up on defense, and they have no answer after that. So it's kind of poetic. It speaks to the Cowboys season and how they played to this point.
Yeah, no, it speaks to how they played this season, and I feel like Mike McCarthy is going to stay just with how long Jason Garrett was there. It's similar with Zach Taylor. It's like I don't really believe in the franchise just with what they've shown us in the past that they're going to suddenly radically make a change where it took so much effort to get rid of Jerry Jones. He's still going over that, and then he paid Dak Prescott of all quarterbacks, the only starting quarterback to get hurt, and suddenly his team is like not affected at all. His team didn't fall off a cliff. They don't look lost. They don't look clueless. They look like a more cohesive, less frustrated unit on offense here with Cooper Rush. And you're paying that guy $60 million, and he really doesn't elevate your team that much. And we're supposed to expect Jerry Jones to fire Mike McCarthy. Like, no, I don't think that's going to happen. They're just going to whiff on another first round draft pick here, and that'll be the end of it.
Yeah, especially like I'm looking at their schedule, right? They face the Panthers next week. I don't know if that's a guaranteed win, but it's a game they should win. And at that point, like they're 5-8. I think they probably finished 7-10, maybe, which is exactly what our prediction was. And I feel like with the Cowboys, the way Jerry Jones will spin it is just like you mentioned. Dak Prescott was hurt. Micah Parsons was banged up in there. And there's some games that could have gone their way. But like any other franchise would fire Mike McCarthy because it's clear that their defense has got substantially worse since Dan Quinn left. Their offense is not the same offense. Obviously, their running game is a lot worse without Tony Pollard. But no, they're going to run it back because the problem is not Mike McCarthy. The problem is not Dak Prescott. We're just going to keep seeing the same old Cowboys. They're going to be the same old irrelevant Cowboys that they've been the last decade, 15 years at this point.
Yeah, no, last decade, 15 years. And then with the Bengals, any hope at all with this game is kind of like more disappointment because you see how dynamic their offense is and how awful their secondary has been.
This game kills me because this is a game that they should have had a month ago. Because at this point, like, who cares that they beat the Cowboys and now they're 5-8? I don't care about that. I don't care. Like Joe Burrow, it's such a tragedy what the Bengals have done to him this season because he would absolutely be the MVP favorite right now if their record was flipped. They were 8-5. He has what he's going to be on pace to have roughly 5,000 yards. He's going to have roughly um, 45 to 50 touchdowns potentially. He's having the best season of his career. And the defense is just terrible at this point. And this game, like their defense looked a little bit better in this game, but their secondary still sucks. Their defense is the reason why that they're 5-8. And I don't know if this means that Lou Anarumo will be gone after this year. I don't know if I can blame it all on Lou Anarumo, but when your defense is this bad and it's the reason why you guys aren't in contention, unfortunately, you're going to be the guy who's cut from this, and it sucks because I think he'll be a fine coordinator somewhere else. But yeah, it's just for me, it's like why wasn't this the game that we saw in October or November when you guys could have actually made a run and make the playoffs? You have to win out and hope that the Broncos lose a few games for you to sneak into the playoffs. You should have been playing like this a month ago.
Yeah, no, you should have been playing like this a month ago. And when you have to rely on another team, it's not in your hand anymore. When you had lost 7 games that were decided by one score, like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Some of those games, like, Joe Burrow could have won where he had the ball in his hands and he didn't come up with the big play here, but still battling a poor offensive line here. And it's unfortunate, but part of it is on the quarterback when you're losing close games. Like, there were situations where you had the ball in your hands, you just didn't score. Why didn't we score at all the first half versus the Chargers? So it's like there are a couple games in there that slipped away that he could have helped his MVP case, even though he does have great stats here. It's like, okay, were there drives at the end of the game where you didn't come up with it? Okay. If that is the case, then you do have to look at the offense as well, even though the defense isn't playing up to par where it should be. But you can't blame it all on the defense when you had the ball in overtime versus the Ravens and you ran it 3 straight times, didn't even try and get Jamar Chase the ball, and then you were leading the second game versus the Ravens, and then you end up blowing that game too, where you have a couple chances with the ball in that one. So like you can look at those 2 games and the Chargers games, and then this is an entirely different season for the Bengals. And I feel like you should have won all 3 of those.
Yeah, and then even looking back to like the Chiefs game, that was a situation where they could have won that game. I think there was some voodoo Chiefs magic playing in there. The Commanders
The
game was
refs.
another one. Could you stop Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback, which I know Jaden Daniels has played well, but you could have stopped if you just got a single stop against the Commanders. If you just have them punt once, you win
No
that
one
game.
punted.
Yeah, nobody punted in that game. You get one punt from the Commanders, and that's the game. You win the game, essentially. And then, yeah, the Ravens game were super close. And then it's just all these one score games. Ultimately, even the Steelers game, you gave up 44 points in that game. They couldn't stop the Steelers. And the Steelers, I mean, you've seen me the last 4 years call them the Guantanamo Bay Steelers. I know their offense is a lot better this year, but this is still a defense, an offense that is containable. It's not like Russell Wilson. Like, this is a guy last year that people were rejecting. There's a reason why the Broncos cut him for $85 million. I'm not saying Russ hasn't played well, but you could have at least you could have contained the Steelers a little better than you did. The defense has definitely been a big issue, but again, those one score games not going your way, it's just it's too little, too late for the Bengals at this point.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but we shall see what they do next year. Hopefully they turn it around, but it's just sad that Joe Burrow's not going to be in the playoffs this year. Really unfortunate, but we'll see. Will they turn it around? Probably not, because you can't stop anybody at all, including Russell Wilson, with George Pickens getting kicked out of the game
Yeah.
because he shot at a fan. It's like, oh, he did a gun sign. Kick him out of the game. There's kids in the crowd. Oh no.
I can't keep track of some of the George Pickens antics because if it's either him fighting a corner or shooting a gun at the fans or just starting a brawl any chance he gets, George Pickens is hard to keep track of with the shit that he does on a week to week basis.
Hey man, we love it though. It gets the team fired up, gets the people going, like they said in Blades of Glory. You know what doesn't get people going? And I know this is going to be your favorite game to talk about. I know you're looking forward to this game when it came into the week. You're like, this is going to be one of my favorite games. Even though it's not on prime time, you're like, I can't wait to watch Mac Jones and Will Levis here. And congratulations, you picked the Jaguars to win. And for a while they were down 6-0. It looked dour, but they went on a 10-0 unanswered run in this game. I mean, what a turnaround for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Their season looking dead. Oh wait, their season actually is dead. And you only scored 10 points in this game. People are like, "Oh wow, look at Mac Jones in this game." People are trying to talk up Mac Jones again. It's like, "What are you talking about?" Mac Jones was terrible last week. He was terrible in this game, and then Will Levis looked like he died at the end of the half, and then he came back in the second half and he played like a quarterback who had died.
This game, I'm actually offended that you said that I was excited to talk about this game. This game, watching this game, I think I actually cringed at every snap. So, Mac Jones, first of all, any idiots that are talking about Mac Jones like he's this guy, yes, it's great that he completed 23 of 31 for 220, but he threw two picks. The offense scores 10 points. Hell, even Travis Etienne at this point is a lost cause. The only real highlight for that offense at this point is their rookie, Thomas. But other than that, everyone's gone. I mean, Evan Ingram, where has he been? And then obviously we
Tank.
had some injuries with Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis, but this team is pathetic. And then the Titans, like, you get like the Titans are playing the long game. I respect it. The Jaguars, this is a team that not just 1 year ago, they were the one seed. They were 7-4. And ever since, the cataclysmic collapse of the Jaguars needs to be studied. Unfortunately, it won't be studied because nobody fucking cares about the Jaguars. But even when two of the four teams are on the bye week, I still fixate on the AFC South and just how pathetic of a division it is. It was in the worst top five last week, and I feel like it only continues to justify my take after this 10-6 game. This 10-6 game, I would have rather watched pretty much any other sport. XFL, I'd rather watch the USFL, I'd rather
Try and
watch
figure out
Pop
cricket.
Warner, I'd rather watch cricket, I'd rather watch tennis, you name it. Insert sport, I would rather watch it than watching Jags Titans. Two teams that are combined 6 of 20 this season with horrible quarterback play, horrible running games, and at this point, horrible coaches. Everything about this just makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah. No, you have moments in your life where you're like, I might be retarded, but I'm not quite sure. And one of those moments is when we were trying to figure out like the rules of cricket. And every time we Googled it, Google AI was like, it's kind of like baseball, but it's not. And we're like, oh,
The
okay.
only the only thing it has in common is that it has a bat, or really it's like a paddle, and there's bases, and that they pitch to you kind of. But cricket, you can try to explain it to me, and I'm just gonna look dead in the eyes with no emotion. I'm gonna be like, yeah, okay. Sounds good. Fucking terrible. Cricket with a fucking paddle. It's like baseball for fucking Indians.
That's
That's what it
literally
is.
what it is. Yeah, I would have rather watch the Titans and Jaguars play cricket than play football.
honestly. And that sucks because Will Levis, we love Will Levis, but this experiment's over. It didn't work. Titans on to the next. Maybe you get Quinn Ewers. Maybe you get Carson Beck. Maybe you get Cam Ward, whoever it might be. Get another guy. He's not. We love Will Levis, but he's not the guy.
No,
He's just not.
no, this game was like watching golf. It really
Yeah,
was.
but you know what? There's a game that might be worse. Believe it or not, a game that might actually be worse, and that was the Saints and Giants game. Was this game worse? I don't know. Maybe not, but it was still one of those games this week. I feel like you get to this point in the season, right? We're super excited in September. Anything football, no matter what it is, you could throw the biggest pile of trash against the biggest pile of garbage, and we're going to be excited for it. Once when you get to December and you've seen 3 months of football, and we're at the finish line of the regular season, and we see these kind of games, it makes you question like, I love this sport, but do we need to see these games? Can we just decide ahead of time, like, all right, we're going to give this game to the Saints. We're going to let the Giants continue to wither. Here's a fun fact. I'm going to pull this out later, anyways, but the Giants have not won a game at home since January 7th. Their New Year's resolution was, hey, let's start winning games at home. And they took care of business early on in that resolution, and they haven't looked back since. They are quite literally 0 and 8 since they won at home on January 7th. You know how many things have changed since January 7th? The world has changed. It's a new world we live in since January 7th. They have not won since then. And like, no matter who they throw out there, they could throw out prime Peyton Manning and nothing would fix this team. This team is an absolute mess. Drew Lock, horrible, just terrible. Daniel Jones, he's playing for Minnesota now. He didn't do anything for you. Tommy DeVito, he did nothing for you. Everything about this team. Malik Neighbors is going schizo on the sidelines. Like, somebody save that man. The Giants, an absolute eyesore each and every week. They make me have to wear these glasses because I'm actually blinded now. I don't even know what I'm looking at right now because I can't see anything because this game has blinded me from any
I
sort of
know.
television.
Honestly, and I had a hot take for this game, and it didn't end up coming true. I thought, Putin would do us all solid and start World War III on Sunday and evaporate MetLife Stadium before this game could take place. But he let us down, and we ended up having to watch this game where it was 14-11, and you see the coach for the Saints turning into the candy bar guy online, and he's like, "That's not where I wanted you to punt the ball. I can't believe you punted the ball there. Now they might get a field goal instead of a 3 and out. What are you thinking?" And then you have why won't Drew Lock just go away? Why is he here? Tyrod Taylor's one thing. Whenever Tyrod Taylor comes in, he actually looks like a competent NFL professional. Does he look like a starter? No. But does he look like complete trash? Absolutely not. But you still have these just bottom feeder floaters who are like sticking around your toilet and it just won't flush. And one of those is Drew Lock. Why is this guy still here? Now we have him starting for the Giants versus the New Orleans Saints, and Derek Carr. What a absolute retard. Are you kidding me? You're the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. You're playing for a job next year. You're like, you know what I should do? You know what would think would be really beneficial? Jump over two people? What are you thinking? He jumps over two people and then he lands on his wrist and his arm comes under him and kind of snaps and then you fracture your wrist? Like, what the hell are you thinking? You're the quarterback. We're not out here trying to hurdle over people. You're not Josh Allen. You're not Lamar Jackson. You're not Cam Newton. Hell, you're not even Alex Smith. So, what the actual were you thinking, Derek Carr, jumping over two defenders? As soon as I saw that, I'm like, what an idiot. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're someone who's playing for your career, and you're like, you know what? Let me jump over two people. That seems like a great idea. Over one of my own guys, too. It wasn't two defenders. Like, this is the most ridiculous play I saw all week. I immediately reacted like, what an idiot, audibly.
Derek Carr also, let's keep in mind that he's closer to 34 than 33. He's one of the oldest guys in the league, and he's trying to jump over offensive linemen like he's Josh Allen or Lamar or Patty, and he's neither of these guys. My biggest takeaway from this game, though, is like we can make fun of the Giants for what they continue to bring out onto the field every single week, but I think we need to talk about the Saints because why is it that ever since Sean Payton and Drew Brees walked out that door, why does it feel like every single game is like what we saw on Sunday? Just a grind for either team to do anything. I feel like Saints games at this point, like if I can call the Steelers the Guantanamo Bay Steelers, I think they're no longer Guantanamo Bay. They could very well get the 1 seed. So the Steelers are free from Guantanamo Bay. Thank God. No more prison time for them. The new Guantanamo Bay is now in New Orleans. The Guantanamo Bay Saints is what we'll call them for the remainder of the season. The Saints, no matter what, each year, I feel like we're accustomed to at least 5 to 9 Saints games that were just gross to watch. And let's look through the season this year. The Eagles game, 15-12, yuck. The
Their
Falcons
first
game,
loss too.
their first loss after they were the Super Bowl favorites. And then they get blown out a couple of times. They have a couple of games in there. They get torched by the Chargers. They lose to the Panthers back before the Panthers were on the run that they're on now. And then they had this Rams game last week that wasn't pretty to watch either. The Falcons game, another
21 to
game that wasn't pretty to.
14.
Yeah. It's like it feels like we're due for more. I mean, let's be honest. We have the Raiders game. That's a game that we don't know how that game is going to be. That game is either going to be 45-44 or it's going to be 7-6. And I feel like it's probably going to be closer to 7-6. The Saints, I feel like at this point, since Drew Brees have walked out that door, outside of the Jameis Winston era, we're just going to see these games, probably 5 to 7 of them each year, that are just painful on the eyes. Like literally the XFL level bad type of game that we see from the Saints, the Guantanamo Bay Saints. I don't care if they're from New Orleans. They are now the Guantanamo Bay Saints. They deserve that echelons for what they have brought out to the field the last 4 years. They, of all teams, the Giants I can laugh at, the Jets I can laugh at, the Bears, all these other teams that we talk about I can laugh at. The Saints, no, they have enough talent that they can be somewhat competing, but they have these games that are just grinds to watch. Like you got to be a real sports fan to watch these Saints games.
Oh yeah, you have to be deep into that film study. As soon as you see Derek Carr hop over two defenders, kind of entertaining. It was entertaining when it started the season, but yeah, they just seem like a team without a direction here. It's like similar. It's gonna like similar with what the Patriots did with Gerard Mayo. Sean Payton moves on, Bill Belichick moves on, and then you just go to Gerard Mayo. You go to Dennis Allen, and you kind of stunt your future where Dennis Allen wasn't a good coach in his first coaching stint here. And he's a defensive guy, but you really didn't have a plan at quarterback. And you keep just pushing your salary cap off and off and off. It's like, yeah, at some point you're going to have to pay that and just bite the bullet and suck. Like, we'd rather you just get on the grind, trade away all of your pieces for picks and sucks. Like, we don't want to see you try and win with Derek Carr anymore. It's like it's time for Derek Carr to retire at this point or be a backup. Like no more starting for Derek Carr. If we're jumping over people, like clearly there's a lack of self-awareness there. So congratulations, you're the next Tennessee Titans quarterback.
Yeah, honestly, he's kind of like I feel like if we can have the treatment of Carson Wentz, where Carson Wentz is now a backup quarterback in this league, and Carson Wentz has had higher highs than Derek Carr, and I don't know if he's had lower lows, to be completely honest. But now he's a backup. And if Carson Wentz can be a backup in this league, I think Derek Carr can also be a backup in this league. A guy who's older, a guy who's had more injuries, a guy who doesn't have the same mobility that Carson Wentz had. I think it's time. Derek Carr, ride the bench, be a mentor, be an Andy Dalton, be one of those guys that you step in maybe once every couple of games a season. But it's over. Derek Carr, you're not a starter anymore. Give me take
No,
some
you're
hat.
not a starter anymore. And, like the treatment of Carson Wentz, I feel like was so unfair, especially with that Eagles team that he dragged to the playoffs when he was throwing to literally Canadian quarterbacks. Like what? And then
Throwing to
people are like,
Travis
"Oh yeah,
Hunter.
what a terrible quarterback. His stats were awful." It's like, okay, where was the help?
His top receiver was Travis Fulgham. Let's not
Yeah.
forget that. Yeah, that Saints game, unwatchable. That game is if that's a primetime game in the future, any Saints game from now on, if it's on a primetime, we have we have problems. And actually, you know what? We do have a primetime game coming from them in the next couple of weeks against the Packers. And this is an opportunity that they can flex out, hopefully, but they won't. We're gonna
When is
watch.
that? Monday?
That is the 23rd, so I think that's a Thursday. It's Sunday night.
Oh,
It's That's 8:15. Yeah, it's Monday Night Football. Monday Night
that
Football, Packers and Saints. Give me
that
a
sounds
fucking
like a
break.
Monday night game. Monday night has the weird obscure matchups where you're like, what is this dog shit matchup? And who thought this was a good idea?
I might not watch that game. That
Even
game is a game I might.
ChatGPT would be like, no, you'll get
No,
0 ratings.
no ratings. Very loser. No,
What a bunch of losers. Two terrible run teams, one awful team playing on Monday night. Truly unimaginable how they thought this was a good matchup, a terrible matchup, some say.
can I like just flex? Just flex it out. I don't understand why they make their own flex rules when nobody cares about the flex rules. Everyone's like, Saints and Packers, put it at a 1 o'clock slate and put another game there because I guarantee when we go over that game in 2 weeks, we will be there to say flex it out. We don't want to see that on Monday Night Football. We look forward to Monday Night Football. We don't look forward to Derek Carr losing and getting humiliated by the Packers. That's not something that we want to see. We want to see a good game, like we saw
Yeah.
last night with Bart and Homer Simpson.
Yeah, and I feel
I'll
like
take
this
that.
has kind of been a therapy session of games, even though we had two of the best games of the season. Some may argue three this week. But if we're staying on the topic of bad games and games that gave me an absolute migraine, watching that Buccaneers and Raiders game just hurt me because the Buccaneers come out 14 nothing and then Baker Mayfield throws an interception. Baker Mayfield throws another pick of like, oh God, what are we doing? Like I was literally getting a migraine watching that game and then rewatching it. It was like, brother, you guys should be up 55 to -2. What is happening right now? And then Aiden O'Connell goes down, and then we have to see an appearance from the one and only your friend's favorite quarterback because he had him in Madden, and that's why he's cursed as a Chargers fan. But I don't even want to say his name. But we saw Desmond Ritter show up for
Yep.
the Raiders here and look okay.
Okay. Yeah, he looked fine. He completed 12 passes for 100 yards. What a showing from Desmond Ritter. You know what? I can't even be that mad at this game because the Raiders are so smart right now. Like, and I don't think like everyone knows exactly what they're doing, including the Raiders. Roger Goodell knows, and he doesn't care either. The Raiders are in cruise control. They're like, you know what? All we need to do is suck, which we already do. All we need to do is suck for the next month, and we're going to get Shador Sanders. So we're going to play competitively, right? We go up, it's 14-10. We're like, oh, maybe we win this game. Nope, just kidding. When it matters most, we will just give up. And that's all that matters. And honestly, for the Raiders, you want to just keep sucking and get Shador Sanders, all the power to you. But on the other side, the Buccaneers. Guys, the Falcons are collapsing before your very eyes. We're seeing the downfall of a Hall of Fame quarterback. And you are playing competitive football against the Oakland Raiders or the Las Vegas Raiders, who at this point, I don't even know how many games in a row they've lost at this point because it's a lot. I think it's up to 10 now. They basically after the Browns game, they're like, well, we suck. We might as well just let Brock Bowers get as many catches as he possibly can, break the all-time single season rookie tight end record. But outside of that, there's no hope. Max Crosby, maybe he doesn't want to be a Raider next year. We'll blow it up. We'll get Shador Sanders. And if all we have to do is suck, which we already do, we have the best job right now. We just have to look somewhat competitive, and we're going to get Shador Sanders. We just can't win football games. That's all we can do. And you know what? Respect to the Raiders. I respect the grind. Respect the tanking. Respectfully.
Yeah, I respect the grind of the Raiders, but the the Bucks just worried me in that game. It's like, please, like if you want to make the playoffs, like The Falcons are falling apart. All you have to do is win this game. Like, why is Baker turning the ball over? Like, he literally just threw the ball in between three defenders. There's no passing window, and the receiver's just like, what? What was that throw? And then you have Baker just throwing it up there while he's being hit, not even looking, just trying to force the ball downfield. So you're starting to see some of those bad habits creep up for him once in a while. It's like, okay, bro, you're going to be playing probably the Packers or the Vikings, probably the Vikings in the first round. It's like, okay, you're paving the way for Sam Darnold to beat you. And then we're just going to hear Uncle Colin talking about, wow, remember 2018 when I said Sam Darnold was better than Baker Mayfield and a better quarterback? It's like, well, you're setting up for that. So you better have the best game of your life if that is your matchup in the first round, or we will never hear the end of it. You need to win that game for America at that point.
Yeah, the battle of to the 2018 class. Good lord, I don't want to hear that. One last thing I got to say about the Bucks, right? The Raiders have had the worst running offense in the entire league. They're running out the Abdullahs of the world, the Alexander Matsons of the world, but they bring out Sincere McCormick, and he averages 5 yards a carry. He gets 80 yards in this game. Who the hell is Sincere McCormick? Who is this guy? They literally picked him up off the streets. Sincere McCormick, which, by the way, great name. Just got to say, fantastic name. He's been great for them. Granted, they don't want him to be great, but he needs to be decent enough. Who? Where did he come from? Nobody knows who the. I don't even know who this guy is. But all of
Footlocker.
a sudden, out of nowhere, he's running all over the Bucks. I don't even think he was drafted. He's an undrafted second-year guy. I'm looking him up right now, but
What college is he from?
he's from UTSA. Maybe I'm not a college buff guy, but who knows? All I know, the Raiders, Sincere McCormick, the Bucks, guys. You guys have the division. By like the Falcons are crumbling. We'll talk about that game next, but good lord, what a game! Sincere McCormick is now on my radar. He's going to be an immaculate grid someday, and I can't wait to pull him for 0.0001%. So thank you for the grids. Thank you for the Raiders for reminding me of this guy who I never knew of before.
Yeah, thank you for the Raiders for letting us know who Sincere McCormick is. I'm definitely a fan of grid players on this show. And if you're watching right now, are you going to find Sincere McCormick on your grid? Probably, because we're probably going to see him on 10 other teams. But, you know, the Falcons had a game to stay in the divisional lead, and they've kind of been free falling. They look like a falcon who kind of got their wings clipped from space, and we're just slowly seeing them fall all the way down from the atmosphere here, all the way back down to earth. And now we have the Atlanta Falcons going to Minnesota, pick the Vikings in this game, and then the Falcons came out. Tyler Algier got a touchdown. And you're like, okay, this Falcons team, maybe they recouped from a bye. Maybe it's Kirk Cousins getting some revenge. And then it was all downhill from there because Sam Darnold went ballistic. He literally I had Justin Jefferson, the person I was facing had Jordan Addison, and they were competing against each other for yards in this game. You probably had the best game of any receiver duo this season. Justin Jefferson hadn't had a touchdown in 2 months. We've been asking the Vikings to free Jordan Addison for the past few months, and finally in this game, they both get loose at the same time. And now Sam Darnold is one of four quarterbacks to have a completion percentage of 57% or above on 20 plus passes, 20 plus yard passes downfield. So Sam Darnold has been playing well, but the Falcons, just falling off a cliff. Now, is this a slump for the rookie head coach? Is it just Kirk Cousins is terrible now and his Hall of Fame career is over? Um, and is it time for Michael Penix, or is that too much for a team who just went out there and paid Kirk Cousins when they still have a chance to compete for the division? So you may not necessarily want to put a rookie quarterback out and you want to ride it out with Kirk Cousins.
I'll tell you what is going to happen. They face the Raiders next week, and then they face the Giants. If they can't beat the Raiders or the Giants, it's not working out with Kirk Cousins. And keep in mind, you know how I feel about Kirk Cousins. Big fan of the show. But the last 4 games, he hasn't scored a touchdown in a month. He hasn't scored a touchdown since the Cowboys came to town. He has 0 touchdowns for 10 interceptions over the last 4 games. He is single-handedly killing the Falcons. And in this game, like when the Vikings let Kirk Cousins go, it was like, okay, it makes sense. His deal is up. He's older. They want to rebuild, get a quarterback. They got JJ McCarthy. They had Sam Darnold fill in. And so the breakup wasn't like hurtful in any way. Kirk Cousins got his money in Atlanta. But you want to talk about who won the breakup? Talk about the Vikings because there were so many plays that I saw Sam Darnold make that I'm like, Kirk Cousins could not have done that. He didn't have the mobility. Sam Darnold, say what you will about Sam Darnold, whether or not he's uh, a permanent starter in this league, which I think this year maybe he proves he deserves another shot at starting. But none of these plays that Sam Darnold made, Kirk Cousins could have also made. The mobility, the 5 touchdowns, the completion rating, the lack of interceptions. At this point, Kirk Cousins is a standing statue at this point. We're seeing the Colts Matt Ryan. We're seeing the Broncos Peyton Manning in 2015. We're seeing, unfortunately, the downfall of a once sought out prince, and now he is leaving his castle in ruins on a horse as he fades off into the sunset, with his career being all but over. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, Achilles, they've taken out two Hall of Fame players at this point, him and Aaron Rodgers. You hate to see it.
Yeah, him and Aaron Rodgers, let's take him out, but this is kind of what you see from these older quarterbacks is you have some juice at the beginning of the year, but as the wear and tear of the season kicks in and the attrition starts to creep up on you, sometimes you just lose your arm strength at the end of the year. And that's what we would see every year with Drew Brees. That's what we saw with Ben Roethlisberger. That's what we saw with Peyton Manning, where they would just struggle to push the ball down the field and they would struggle to throw accurately down the field. So they're just managing the game with their mind, their high IQ. Kirk Cousins' high IQ doesn't necessarily go together, especially when it comes to winning big games and big moments. A guy who's never won a playoff game in his life, and now we're starting to like treat him like a Hall of Famer. Like, no, this guy has always been a good regular season stat patter, but the reality is he lost to Daniel Jones, and he's the one who got Daniel Jones paid. He ruined Brian Daboll's career forever. He ruined the New York Giants by letting them win that playoff game. So, in a way, if you're a Giants hater, you could say Kirk Cousins did you the biggest favor in the world by losing that game to the Giants because he just lit a fuse and then blew it right up. And maybe making the playoffs would have been enough for them to pay Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll, but you never know.
I want to fact check you. He actually did win a playoff game. He won against the Saints against Drew Brees in 2019. So Hall of Fame Kirk Cousins is still on the table. Let's not be too crazy here.
Oh, he won
Yeah,
a game. He's
he
won
did win a
still won
game.
less playoff games than Tim Tebow's and Nick Foles.
Well, Nick Foles is a
Nick
whole different
Foles
beast.
has an entire Kirk Cousins playoff resume in 2 seasons.
I don't want to hear the slander with Kirk Cousins. I understand. I mean, he very well might have sank the Giants, which I think that honestly improves his Hall of Fame case, in my opinion. But I can't defend him this year. I mean, 0 touchdowns, 10 picks. What's there to argue at this point? At this point, I think if they lose to the Raiders, like, I don't think you could point to Raheem Morris and say Raheem Morris is the problem. 0 touchdowns and 10 picks in 4 games. Like, if he played a full season, you're talking about a Jameis Winston 30 for 30, but without the 30 touchdowns. We're looking at 0 for 4. We're talking about a 40 interception season potentially if he played a full season like he has the last month. Can't defend him anymore. If they lose this game and the Bucks win, then at that point you might as well put Michael Penix in. If the last 3 games are just wasted games that don't matter, then why not? See what you got with the kid. You picked him 8th overall. Everyone clowned you for picking him after you just signed Kirk Cousins to this huge deal. You probably knew something we didn't. We're not as smart as we think we are, NFL fans, that is. So why not? Go out and see what you have with Michael Penix. Kirk Cousins, you can get off of him if you really wanted to. And no harm, no foul. Maybe let him stay next year as a backup, but at this point, like, what do the Falcons have to lose at this point?
Yeah, and it's like Kirk Cousins doesn't really seem like he's focused on his playoff resume. What he is focused on, though, is just raking in cash. And his past few contracts, he's done that. I mean, his Vikings deals, he got guaranteed money, and then he got a really good contract from the Atlanta Falcons here. So, one thing he's always done is make cash. And, if he loses to the Raiders, it's just going to be another moment where it's like, okay, Kirk Cousins ruined the Giants by letting them win that playoff game, and Daniel Jones got paid. And then if I lose to the Raiders, I might screw them out of getting Shador Sanders if they don't have the number one overall pick and they end up beating the Falcons. So another situation where Kirk Cousins just looks at the board and he goes, B6 hit.
He just has it on the board to just ruin these franchises. That would actually be poetic. Because I think that if the Raiders win and the Jags lose, and the Jags have the number one overall pick, and they have a very interesting conversation there. I'm looking at his contract. He'll be back next year. There's no doubt about it. The cap hit would be 65 million otherwise. Plus, if they do some work with the cap, but they can get out of this deal after next year. With only a pretty small dead cap hit. So I feel like he's going to come back next year as their backup and let him basically be the Andy Dalton in this situation with Michael Penix. And then Michael Penix steps in, and hopefully Michael Penix is what they expected him to be. Um, but I think next season he probably retires at that point. What does he have to play for at this point? His season's
Yeah,
over. He's already got the
exactly.
Hall of Fame resume.
Yeah, I say he's probably there for one more year, collects his $65 million, just like Aaron Rodgers, where they asked him about the New York Jets, and like he's like, well, I renovated my house, so I was planning to play here for a long time, play here for a while, which kind of goes against the rumors we heard where Aaron may want out, but the New York Jets probably have their best game of the year in Miami, and it just didn't matter because Tua has something to prove. Tua's a dog now. He said with that last drive, we just had to go out there, man, and like do it. Like people were doubting us. It's like a different mentality. We have something to prove. It's like you guys have proven you could be a good team in the regular season. That is it. No one has ever viewed you as this massive juggernaut that's going to go out there and win a Super Bowl. You had something to prove coming into the season, which you still haven't proven yet, which is can you win in below 40-degree weather? It's like, you can't do that. You haven't proven it yet. You got blown out in Lambeau versus the Green Bay Packers. And now, so it was like, oh, yeah, we had something to prove in that game versus the Jets. You mean you should have beat one of the worst teams in your division that might who finished with a worse record than the Patriots and might pass you next year if we have Drake May to T Higgins. Like the Patriots will be a better team with you than you next year if they get T Higgins. Like your window is shut. It's over. The door is slammed. You paid Tua, and he's not a good quarterback and can't win outside of Miami. And now you're like, oh yeah, we had something to prove in that game. Like, oh, fantastic. You fell behind to the Jets and came back when you should have never been behind in the first place. What do you want? An award? You're fighting for your playoff life. Like, okay. Like, no one, like, you were injured. No one was ever like, you're this great team. This team has something to prove. Like, you've never not had something to prove. You haven't won a playoff game.
Well, the funny thing about what you're saying is I agree with you. But the next two games, they're in Houston and then they're in San Francisco, which I think they win those games, which puts them now at, in this scenario, 8-7. The problem is that they end the season in Cleveland in the middle of December. And then the last game of the season, they're going to have to get their little blankies for the Jets in East Rutherford. And what's more embarrassing than losing to the Jets this past weekend? How about losing to them to miss the playoffs? A Jets team who might end the season with just that fourth win, the last game of the season. What will go down as the most pathetic, maybe most disappointing season in Jets history, which actually, you don't understand how much that actually carries weight. When I say most disappointing Jets season of all time, you have to think about maybe 15 to 20 seasons that could compare for the Jets. And the fact that this might be their most disappointing season speaks to how disappointing this season is, but also that it's actually arguable whether it is. Now, in this game, what was funny for me is no matter how big of a lead the Jets get this season, I don't believe they're going to win the game. This happened last week when they had that lead. I'm like, this is great that they're leading, but I just something doesn't feel like they're going to win this game. And lo and behold, they lose. The Colts game. I'm like, yeah, it's great that they're leading, but are they going to win this game? Nope, they don't. And it's because you know why? They don't have a coach. They don't have a GM. And at this point, Aaron Rodgers is clocked out. Devontae Adams, he's getting scammed by Aaron Rodgers for not just the first time, but the second time. Remember when he got traded to the Raiders for Derek Carr, and the very next year Derek Carr left? It's going to happen the same way. He's going to be stuck in New York, and Aaron Rodgers is going to leave. Maybe he goes somewhere else in the NFL. Maybe he walks off into the sunset. But Devontae Adams has been scammed twice. The Jets, they're clocked out. They're done. But this game, congrats for the Dolphins. They beat the Jets in warm weather. Let's see how they do in January when they face them again.
Yeah, we'll see what happens when they face them again. It's so funny how clocked out Aaron Rodgers is, though, because they're like, Aaron, the Jets have sucked for a long time. Like, how do you feel about that? He's like, well, I've only been here 1 year, so uh this year sucks, I guess. Even though I'm making $60 million, like he just does not care at all. Doesn't even feel real that he's on the New York Jets. And I feel like this year maybe he's realizing that he can't compete, he can't lead a team to a Super Bowl, which we knew coming into the season. A lot of people thought the Jets would be Super Bowl contenders for some reason, even though Aaron Rodgers has underachieved in the playoffs since 2010. And ever since that conference championship versus the Seattle Seahawks, he's kind of just underachieved in the playoffs here in the NFC, and then he goes over to the AFC, and we're supposed to expect this guy to compete. Like, no, never was going to happen at all. And there's not really going to be a market for him. I just can't really envision him on any other team that has a chance to compete.
I don't know who's going to want him at that point. I feel like maybe whoever doesn't get their quarterback in the draft, but at the same time, like having someone like Aaron Rodgers on your team, I don't know if it's the same as the guys I'm about to compare to, but hear me out. Like when you have that level of brand that Aaron Rodgers has, it reminds me somewhat of like having a Cam Newton or a Tim Tebow way back when. Obviously, he's better than those two quarterbacks historically, but like you can't just have Aaron Rodgers as a backup and not expect to have news articles come out each and every week. Think about before he even went to the Jets, he had headlines with the Packers with the whole COVID stuff. And then he goes to New York, and it feels like it's only been exacerbated since. Every single week, there's a headline about Aaron Rodgers. He's talking about maybe I play for the Jets this year, maybe I don't, maybe I retire, maybe I play for Jeopardy, maybe I do this. Like every single week, there's a headline with Aaron Rodgers. Ever since he joined the Jets, it seems like there's been some sort of scandal, one way or another. Robert Saleh gets fired, Joe Douglas gets fired. They're trading for Devontae. They're doing something. The Jets just ever since the Aaron Rodgers situation has occurred in New York, it's been a complete dumpster fire. Now, tell me, for those listening, what's a dumpster fire to a team that's already a dumpster fire? We're looking at a ceasefire. We're looking at a potential forest fire, something very dangerous, something that the state of California fears the most. And that's what the Jets are. You put a dumpster fire with a dumpster fire, and suddenly now you have a bigger dumpster fire, and that's what the Jets have become.
Yeah, no, this season for the New York Jets is their Pompeii. There's
It's
no
the
escaping it.
There's no escaping. It's like Yellowstone if the volcanoes do actually erupt. So maybe I don't know what's going to happen there. But hey, you know what? For this game specifically, good for Tua, good for the Dolphins. They got to win. They got away from the frigid cold, which we know that is what kills dolphins. We found out. Good for them. They got the win. They're still in contention for now. And the Jets, 3-10, 3-10. Give me a fucking break. Pathetic. The city of New York is in shambles. First, not only that, not only the Jets and Giants suck, but then the Yankees lose Juan Soto to the Mets. They're crosstown rivals. I mean, good lord. What is this World Cup? The city of New York is in absolute shambles, and I'm here to
Yeah.
see it.
CEOs getting shot in New York here. Like, what is happening in New York? And then down the road, you have Philadelphia there. Now, AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, they've kind of been beefing since the end of last season, but the beef is heating up. We have diss tracks coming out soon, and reporter asks AJ Brown, they're like, what's the issue with the offense right now? And he's like, passing. That's our issue right now. It's Daniel Jalen Hurts is turning into the black Daniel Jones very quickly for this team, where he's just putting up mediocre to bad stat lines week in and week out. And Saquon Barkley has covered a lot of holes for this Philadelphia offense, but Jalen Hurts has not played that well this season, and he hasn't been exceptional over the past few weeks. It's like the amount of games where he's thrown for under 200 yards is absolutely ridiculous. Hasn't really reached above 250 yards that much. His rushing game has been good. Most of the rushing touchdowns, though, are the tush push here where they're at the goal line and it's just an unstoppable play there. But now AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts kind of a little bit of rough chemistry. And this is why I can't wrap my arms around the Philadelphia Eagles as a contender. And when you look at the issues and the headlines coming out about Sirianni to start the year, Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown kind of carrying a rift from the end of last season into this year, where it seems like they're not really friends anymore. And now suddenly they're the most talented roster in the NFL. Suddenly they're a better contender by the Lions. You have Chris Sims spewing nonsense. And then you get into an absolute dogfight with the Carolina Panthers that you should have lost. I picked the Panthers in the upset in this game, and that receiver just catches the ball. You have a touchdown, you win the game right there, and a fan loses $3 million for his bet there. Drake level loss on a bet there, and then Philadelphia Eagles find a way to pull it out. But just watching this game, it's like this just doesn't look like a Super Bowl team.
I agree. And I looked up the stats because you made a good point. So he hasn't thrown for over 200 yards since November against the Commanders, and he hasn't thrown for over 250 since the Browns in October in week 4. So
Week 4?
he hasn't thrown for over 250 since week 4 of the NFL.
Oh
And
my
like,
god.
yeah, he's had some tush push. He has 13 rushing touchdowns, which is great. Most of them on the goal line, it seems like. But like, I can't speak too much for Jalen Hurts and what he's done for this team because I don't really know what he's done. If you get rid of Saquon Barkley out of this team, a guy who's first in every single rushing category for the most part, what is this Eagles team? I feel like Saquon has actually saved the Eagles at this point. I don't think that they're 11-2 without Saquon Barkley. And if we're talking about the MVP race, which at this point, uh, Josh Allen's the overwhelming favorite. We'll talk about the Bills in a second, but Saquon Barkley is the reason why the Eagles are where they are. And also, like with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, like what, where does the beef start there? Because it started off so well. Is this turning into the Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs scenario where they just hate each other? There's just something wrong in the air, bad blood, no brotherly love in Philadelphia potentially. I don't know what it is, but outside of the Eagles, Bryce Young continues to give me hope for the Panthers. They didn't win this game, but if Xavier Legette could just catch that pass, then we're looking at a game where the Panthers win, and they're showing optimism out of this game. A whole lot to
Yeah.
dissect in that game.
Yeah, no, a lot to dissect. And then, this is a game where it looks like the Eagles like definitely would not be 11-2 without Saquon Barkley. And honestly, I don't even think they would be in the playoffs without Saquon at this point, just with how many times he's just carried their offense and saved them. Like Jalen Hurts not having a 250-yard passing game since week 4 is absolutely ridiculous. Most of his touchdowns are just the tush push. It's not him elevating the team and playing exceptional. And Saquon has kind of saved this team here. There's a reason why you can argue he's the most valuable player, and it's for games like this where you probably would have lost like 16-10 in this game if it wasn't for Saquon Barkley. And your defense has played better, but overall, just don't love it in Philadelphia. And I don't think this is a Super Bowl roster. Like the chemistry, like is gonna be what comes back to bite you. Just the issues with Nick Sirianni, issues with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, and this is just a sign to me. It's like, okay, AJ Brown is going to be gone catching passes from Shador Sanders with Brock Bowers next season in Las Vegas. Like that's just how it's going to be. That's how it's going to work out for the Raiders. They'll get their quarterback and trade for their wide receiver here and have some picks for their offensive line.
Yeah, I see it. And again, like we haven't really fully embraced the Eagles this year because of just the bad. It just seems like there's bad air in Philadelphia, and I don't even know what to point to. Who to blame? Is it Jalen Hurts? Is it AJ Brown? Is it Nick Sirianni? But this is a team that I do think, whether they have that same collapse like they had last year, I just can't bank on the Eagles making the Super Bowl and winning it.
Yeah, and then, the Panthers, they tried, but you ended up dropping the ball in this game, literally at the goal line. That should have been a touchdown. Should have been a game-winning drive from Bryce Young, but we never got to see it there. That fan kept his $3 million in that bet. So congrats to the Philadelphia Eagles for pulling it out in that one. And then we had Jameis Winston come back. He looked like pre-LASIK Jameis Winston in this game, going 2 for 2. Not a very dynamic Jameis Winston game. Only threw the ball 41 times, had 2 interceptions, only 2 touchdowns, only averaging 8.8 yards a pass. Kind of a mild game for Jameis Winston here for 212 yards. Kind of the opposite of what we've seen from Jalen Hurts. And then Russell Wilson cooked in this game. He didn't have the greatest game in the world, but he was efficient, had 2 touchdowns, 158 yards, did what he needed to do, and Steelers escape with the win, escape losing for to the Browns and getting swept, I believe, for the first time in like 20 years. I don't think the Browns have ever swept the Steelers in their matchup, actually. And then the Steelers come out on top, win the game here. I mean, they put themselves in position to be the 2 seed in this game, especially with Buffalo losing on Sunday. That was a loss where Buffalo went from looking and having their eyes on the 1 seed, hoping the Steelers and the Broncos could beat the Chiefs, to now the Steelers are looking up at Buffalo like, oh, we could actually be the 2 seed. And if things shake out completely in our favor and we beat the Chiefs, we could actually end up being the number 1 seed if the Chiefs end up dropping a few games at the end of the year.
Yeah, yeah, the Steelers this game, they dominated the Browns. I felt like this was revenge for the snow game that we saw a couple of weeks back, one of the best games of the season. But they dominated. Russ did what he had to do. He's been efficient. He hasn't been outstanding, but he's been good. He hasn't turned the ball over. They've been clean. And then the running game's been really good for them. Browns, Jameis Winston, it's the Jameis Winston experience. We're going to get touchdowns. We're going to get interceptions. We're going to have these games where it's kind of lackadaisical, but I think they'll bounce back. But they are in a situation where the Chiefs, I feel like everyone kind of feels like the Chiefs are due for a loss. We'll talk about the Chiefs game soon enough. But the Steelers are in a very good position where they face the Chiefs on Christmas, and then I think they face the Ravens. They have a kind of a tough schedule ahead, but I think that they can beat all the teams in front of them that they faced. Face the Eagles, who have chemistry issues, the Ravens, who they've already beaten, the Chiefs, who look like they can be beat, and then the Bengals, who I think they've already beaten already this year. Um, they
Yeah, they
have,
did.
yeah, yeah, in that blowout game, so or the shootout game. So yeah, like I think they can win the next 4 games. They can beat the Chiefs. If the Chiefs can lose another game in there, then they very well could be the 1 seed, and I think they deserve so.
Do the Steelers give you a vibe of a team that kind of like, this is like the type of team that wins a Super Bowl, that has had a good defense, has kind of been missing an offense, and then they've looked good throughout the year, but they really haven't hit their stride yet, where it looks like they're starting to click at the exact right time heading into the playoffs, and they're starting to play their best season of the football. They're starting to actually dominate teams, put up points in offense, and then their defense and offense is coming together. And then if you can go on a run and win out against a very tough schedule heading into the playoffs, could you see a scenario where that helps fuel a championship push for the Steelers, or do you think it's not really doable with the Chiefs still there?
I feel like the Steelers are in a really interesting spot because it feels like no matter how much they win, nobody believes in the Steelers to win it all because you have everyone's eyes on Josh Allen, you have your eyes on Lamar Jackson, and rightfully so. But I feel like no matter how good the Steelers are this year, nobody believes that they're going to make it, even though they have the best defense, even though Russ is to some extent turning back the clock, even though the run game is a lot more efficient. credit to Arthur Smith and how good the offensive coordinator, how he's filled in for them and how they've been. I feel like this is a team that defensively they can stop any team in the AFC, and offensively, like they prove that they can get into shootouts and score points. They've put up points at a pretty good clip over the last 2 months, anyways. This is a perfect team to buy and invest into that bandwagon because I feel like even Vegas, like I don't think people believe in the Steelers quite enough for a team that has been continuously winning games. I mean, you take out that Browns game where they had that snow game where they got a shit ton of snow. The last loss before that was week 5 against the Cowboys, and they've been on an absolute tear since.
Yeah, they haven't lost outside the snow game with Russell Wilson, and I think it's one of those games where they're not going to be favored, and that kind of is going to play into their hand here, where people really aren't going to be expecting much from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then they're going to go out there, probably demolish their first opponent in the first round. Then people will be like, "Oh, okay," and we'll see some vintage Russell Wilson, and then we'll see where it takes them. But they have an opportunity to jump into the number 2 seed after this week because you play Philadelphia. It's the battle for Pennsylvania this week, and then Buffalo plays the Lions. So Buffalo could end up dropping 2 games in 2 weeks here at the time where this is not the time to start falling apart and losing games. And then suddenly Buffalo, you're looking at the 3 seed and potentially playing Baltimore or the Chargers in the first round. The Chargers have had a good defense, so couple situations where Josh Allen turns back the clock and has some bad turnovers, then it's never going to be an easy game versus the Chargers in the playoffs this year when their defense is playing that well. And speaking of the Chargers, it's like,
One
uh,
second. When it comes to the Steelers, of all the teams that are division leaders in the AFC, I'm not even going to mention the Texans. The Bills have had some tough games that Josh Allen, maybe it's the 9 for 30 game we talk about. The Ravens, they've had some stinker games. The Chiefs, even though they've won most of their games, they've had games playing close against the Raiders, the Panthers, all those other games. The Steelers are the only team in the AFC where even their losses, you could argue, were winnable games or games that could have easily gone their way. The Browns game they lost to recently was a blizzard that they lost. The Cowboys game, if you remember that Cowboys game, that was the game that got delayed because of lightning. That I think the game was played till 2 a.m. A weird
yeah.
fluky game they lost to against the Cowboys. And then the Colts game was a one-score game, 27-24. All of the games that they've lost were all games that they easily could have won, and some of these situations were just fluky outcomes. Snow, lightning. I don't know what happened to the Colts game, but I'm sure something happened. Maybe somebody streaked the field or something. But Steelers in all of their games that they've lost were in winnable position to win.
Yeah, and Justin Fields lost 2 of those games for you. So you look at that, you're like, okay, well, we've really only lost 1 game with Russ, and it was in a blizzard to a divisional opponent here. No shame in losing to a team within your division.
Not at all. Unlike the Chargers, I think a good game to talk about next is the Chiefs and Chargers because at this point it's just like I'm not a Chiefs hater. I've never have been. I'm a big fan of Patrick Mahomes. I respect greatness and I'm happy that they're winning. However, there's got to be some point where I step in and I say, guys, this team has the lowest point differential of any team that has won 12 games of their 13 since 2000. Every other team that has won 12 of their first 13 games have a differential higher than 100. Their differential is 56, which is by far the lowest of any of these other teams. By the way, all these teams who end up winning the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, I feel like for justice for the NFL, they need to not win the Super Bowl because if they win the Super Bowl, then people are just going to be even more pissed that they keep winning. At some point, you got to give it to someone else. I'm a man of fairness. I'm a man of just reasoning, and you knew as soon as they got the ball what was going to happen. They were going to march down the field. They were going to kick a field goal, and they were going to beat the Chargers. And well, lo and behold, this is exactly what played out.
Yeah, it's exactly what played out here, and you literally doink the ball in to win your division. I mean, you can't make it up at this point, and it's like last year they were I don't know. I don't know if they were worse or better last year as the Kadarius Tony year, but they were losing games at least last year. They had what 6 losses last season. We picked them to go 11-6. We absolutely nailed that record. They go 11-6 last season, end up winning the Super Bowl, go on the road to Buffalo, go on the road to Baltimore, win both of those games, and now they're going to be the number 1 seed this year, and they're winning games that I don't know, just have these weird outcomes. I don't know if there's some weird Taylor Swift hex on it, but like the Chargers get dominated in the first half. So I guess if you're not going to show up and score for an entire half, you deserve to lose the game. But then you come out, you look so good in the second half. You had the game in your hands, and then the Chiefs get the ball at the end with a chance to win. You're just like, here we go. Like, it's over. Pass interference. There we go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Right on cue. It's like as soon as they get the ball at the end, it's like the Broncos miss a kick and then the Chiefs miss a kick and then it hits off the upright and goes in. It's like, all right, that's just been the entire season. I don't know if it's a sign that they're going to win the Super Bowl or get to the playoffs and then get blown out in a divisional round. I just,
I hope it's the latter. I'm like, here's the thing, like, it's not that I care about them having a three-peat. It's the way that they're going to have the three-peat. There have been so many games this year that have been determined by whether it be a field goal at the end of the game or a call that should have gone their way. Like every single game has been a one-score game. And I remember a couple of years ago when the Vikings had that similar scenario. Granted, Chiefs and Vikings are much different stories, but similar in the situation where all of these close games. They've won 15 consecutive one score games, an NFL record. At some point, their luck has to run out. And I feel like it has to happen in the playoffs. Now, maybe they lose to the Steelers coming up. And I think, what else do they have? They have the Broncos, the last game of the season. They might just bench people at that point. Maybe that's a loss. But otherwise, I don't know when they lose next. And I like again, I'm not a Chiefs hater, but like, what is going? This team has some sort of demonic sense to it. It feels like this Chiefs team. It seems like there's a devil hex. They cannot lose if Taylor Swift is in the audience. I don't know what it is. All I know is that there's some voodoo shit going on with the Chiefs. That's all I know.
yeah. Yeah, no. It's kind of crazy because I want the Chiefs to be good. I want to see them three-peat, but I think if the Chiefs get to the Super Bowl and win it, we're gonna get Patriots Rams Part 2 if they win the Super Bowl this year. Like it's not gonna be pretty at all. It's gonna be a bad, ugly game. People will be like, "All right, is there a Woj bomb? Who knows?"
Yeah, I just feel like this might be their. I don't know. Like maybe this is probably the last year for Travis Kelsey. I feel like. Um, And then after that, like Andy Reid's older. I don't know. Maybe this is their last dance potentially. I don't know. Not for the Patrick Mahomes, of course, but maybe just for this era of the Chiefs. Because we saw the Patriots go 10 years without a Super Bowl. Maybe we see that after this year, but I just feel like it would be wrong for the Chiefs to win this year. Not only because they've won the last two, but just how they've played. They haven't been the best team in football, yet they have the best record. It just doesn't feel fair.
Yeah, I mean, but life's not fair. The NFL's not fair. Just like with Josh Allen, setting two records in a row and then losing on Sunday. We have the highest scoring game of the NFL season with the Rams and the Bills, 44-42. And people are like, Josh Allen had the best game. How can you blame Josh Allen for losing? Like, well, how about you score in the fourth quarter and then hey, you might win the game if you don't fall behind by 2, 3 possessions to the Rams. It's usually a good place to start if you don't want to lose a game here. But oh, I'm sorry. The Aaron Donaldless Rams are too hard to figure out for a whole quarter of football. My bad.
Yeah, they were down 31-14 in the third quarter. And then, I mean, I got to give them credit for coming back the way they did. But at the same time, they had a minute left when the game got as close as they did. Josh Allen had a great game. So I'm not going to shit on Josh Allen because, I mean, 6 touchdowns. He threw for 350. He had 80 yards on the ground. Like, he played great. The defense that Sean McDermott continuously always gets praises for, team that like at some points is the best defense in football, and other times they give up 44 points to a Rams team that looked dead a couple of weeks ago. Like this the Saints game that happened literally last week. They went to battle with the Guantanamo Bay Saints in an absolute gritty, terrible NFL game last week. And then they come out against the Bills, and suddenly they're the team that we've been talking about all year that could win that division, and maybe they still do. Like, Puka Nakoa goes nuclear in this game, makes one of the best catches of the year. Cooper Cup gets going. Kyron Williams gets going. Matt Stafford has a Matt Stafford type of game. Like, where this is the Bills team that held the Niners to 10 points. They beat the Chiefs. They've had a really great run defensively, but now they just get fried by the Rams, a team that looked dead. Like, make it make sense, man, because it doesn't make sense. Again, I'm not going to put this on Josh Allen necessarily because he had a great game, but the defense, where did you go? You just had a great game last week. You've been great all season. What happened here?
Yeah, no, it's what happened here. And, the problem with this team that I've had for the past few years is Sean McDermott, where you're at the goal line and you're trying to score here, and then you run the ball and have to take a timeout when you need all three of those timeouts to stop the clock versus the Rams. And then Tom Brady was just in the box, like, what are you doing? Josh Allen's playing out of his mind here. Then you run the ball, have to take a timeout. So you're just conceding that you have to do an onside kick to win the game because you can't stop Matthew Stafford and Cooper Cup, even though you're a defensive head coach, and you end up having to burn a timeout because you run the football. Like, it's just stuff like this that keeps happening with Sean McDermott. You're like, you can't just trust the play calling. You lose the highest scoring game where you still have a chance to stop the Rams and get the ball back. And then you're like, you know what? We're going to run the ball and then make sure we have to get an onside kick to win the game. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense at all, and I don't understand what he was doing. This is as dumb as a fake punt with Damar Hamlin. Like, this is stellar choking from Sean McDermott. This guy still doesn't know how to make in-game adjustments. And this guy still doesn't know how to win clutch, crucial games, just like the Texans game, where all they had to do was go to overtime. You had all the momentum, but they're like, you know what? Let's have Josh Allen almost turn the ball over 3 straight times. That's a great idea. And now this time, when you do need to pass the ball, let's run it and burn a timeout. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I feel like Sean McDermott's awareness needs to be questioned more. That Damar Hamlin play, what a terrible play call. I mean, I don't think that play call gets enough shit for how bad it was in a playoff game, mind you. He was trying to have a Rudy moment. Pathetic. But yeah, in this game, running the ball. I mean, don't even. And the funny thing about it with the running play was that James Cook could not get going on the ground whatsoever in this game. He had 6 carries for 20 yards. Like, he didn't get anything going. James Cook did not have a great game in this game. Josh Allen was Superman. He had 3 touchdowns passing, and he was electric in this game. Had a great second half too. And then you proceed to run the ball. Like, you just got to think. You got to have the better wherewithal. What's working right now? What's not working? Also, we have 3 timeouts. Why are we going to run the clock down by running a play and running the ball up the field? Just the awareness of Sean McDermott. It's the difference. It's what sets him apart from people like the Mike Tomlins of the world, the Andy Reids of the world, the Dan Campbells of the world. The difference between them. Sean McDermott, in situations like this, he's an idiot. Hate to say it.
Yeah, no, he definitely is. He doesn't know how to manage the game still. And then we had one of the best games of the year. Cooper Cup making touchdown catches on his knee. Absolutely ridiculous stuff from him and Puka Nacua in this game. So with the Rams, does this give you any hope at the end of this year going into it? Or do you think this is just a random fluky game where they just Matt Stafford sees Josh Allen on the other side and it's like, okay, it wasn't really inspiring playing the Saints and Derek Carr in the past few weeks, but now that we have the Bills on the other side, want to show up and kick some ass against a real contender. Do you think this gives you hope for them to win their division, or do you still kind of like look at it like, no, probably still gonna miss the playoffs?
I have hope for them now. I think this game kind of. I bought my stock back in with the Rams at this point because, like, the 49ers are dead. The Cardinals, I can't fully embrace the Cardinals. I've seen them in too many games that I can't trust them in. And then the Seahawks, like, I just feel like they're too inconsistent for the Rams. At this point, if they win out, they'll win their division at this point. They have the Niners, who are dead, and then they face the Cardinals. They face the Jets, who, God, like anybody can beat the Jets at this point. You and I can go on the field and beat the Jets at this point. And then they end the season with the Seahawks. And I feel like if I
Ooh.
know the NFL and how they play these sort of games, is this is going to be a game that will ultimately decide the division, the end of the season, week 18, where a lot of people are resting starters. They're playing for their division. And I feel like the Rams are the better team. Defensively, maybe not, but I look at the Seahawks like, can they defend Puka Nakoa, Cooper Cup, Kyron Williams, Matt Stafford? I don't know.
Yes.
I can't confidently say that with how the Seahawks have been.
Yeah, I think they can, especially with how they've been over the past month. Like their defense has been getting better every single week. They have two legitimate corners on that team. They have a pass rush, and I do think overall Seattle is a better team. I think they have a better run game than the Rams here, and you have two weapons, maybe not as good as Puka Nakua or Cooper Cup, but you still have DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba here. And then all around, I think Seattle has been a better, more consistent team throughout the season. They've been figuring out over the past few months. You just beat the Cardinals twice over the past 3 weeks. You beat the San Francisco 49ers, which is something Geno Smith has never done. So when it's going to be the end of the year here with Sean McVay, Matt Stafford versus the Seattle Seahawks, I do think that will be a game for the division here. But if the Rams lose Thursday night, that's going to be the game that decides it because Seattle looked really good on Sunday. And if you come off this huge emotional win versus the Buffalo Bills, where you go up there, put up 44 points, have the highest scoring game of the NFL season, and then you have to come out and get right back up for the San Francisco 49ers, who's another divisional opponent who historically Kyle Shanahan has had Sean McVay's number, so sweeping them is going to be very hard. It's like I don't think so. And the San Francisco 49ers are also still trying to stay in it. So I think that's going to be the game where if they go out there, beat the Niners on Thursday Night Football, then you can have that conversation. But I think we still have to wait one more game for this team to see it. But I do think, Seattle, they've been getting better every week. They had the Cardinals. Something was in the water there. Chlorine was talking. And, Seattle came out. They got it done versus the Arizona Cardinals. And they've been kind of on a hot streak over the past few weeks here. They've been playing good football. I liked what I've seen from their defense. Mike McDonald's been coaching up that team. Starting to actually see some results here when they're struggling, and they've steered the ship, and now they're kind of sitting at the top of their division and control their own destiny.
I just think that I'm looking at the rest of their schedule. The Rams have a lot easier schedule moving up. The Seahawks have to face the Packers and the Vikings and the Rams to end it, and then the Bears, which I'm not worried about, but they have a tougher schedule. And then the Rams, they face the Jets, which should be an easy win. The Niners are just so beat up at this point. I think the Rams can take care of the 49ers in that game. So I do think it's going to come down to it. I also think in a scenario where they both lose next week, where they both lose, the Niners lose and the Seahawks lose, they're still in a position to win that division, even with that loss. So I think it's going to come down to week 18 and really whoever's playing the hottest. I don't want to poke holes in the Seahawks necessarily, but the last 3 weeks they faced the Cardinals twice and then the Jets and then the Niners. These are four teams or three teams that I don't know if I super believe in hardcore. The Jets game, they nearly lost. And then the Cardinals game, this past week, they took care of business, but 16-6 the week before, gritty game. I'm not super sold on the Seahawks. I don't trust Geno Smith as much as I would trust Matt Stafford. And I just feel like the Rams' weapons are better than the Seahawks currently.
Yeah, they are better, but Seattle has a much better defense to compete with their offense. Whereas with the Rams, I just don't really think their defense is as competitive of a matchup versus Seattle's offense. But I do think you just have to split with the Packers and the Vikings, and I think that they can beat the Rams in that matchup. But it'll be interesting, and I hope that division comes down to the last game of the season because it seems like we've gotten one of those at the end of each NFL season where you just have one game usually flex to Sunday Night Football to decide who's going to win a division and make the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that's what the NFL wants because Week 18, some of these players aren't going to be playing, and I feel like this would be a perfect scenario for them to win. Especially like I guess might as well talk about the Seahawks game at the same time. They annihilated the Cardinals. The Cardinals. This is a team again. Like I can never fully embrace the Cardinals because I mean, Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray, their chemistry doesn't exist. James Conner, he played fine. Kyler Murray, he had a pretty average game, but again, it's the Seahawks just owning the Cardinals. They shut them down offensively. And then we saw Zach Chabernet go absolutely nuclear in this game, running all over the Cardinals. He had roughly 200 scrimmage yards, if you include receiving yards as well. Ballistic after Kenneth Walker's out in that game. Nuclear. And the Cardinals are done. The Cardinals are not making the playoffs. They don't deserve to. Their defense is average. Their offense is average. Everything about the Cardinals is average. They might finish 8-9. They're done. I don't trust the Cardinals.
Yeah, no, we kind of predicted like every note of the Cardinals season where it's like, well, we may show signs of them. They'll give their fans some hope and then eventually end up competing for a wild card spot, but missing the playoffs when it comes down to it. But they're just not going to be good enough this season. That's exactly what has happened with the Cardinals. Like, kind of played every note with what was going to happen. And that's exactly what went on with the Cardinals. Like, all right, at one point you're on top of your division, fall off a cliff here. You lose back to back games to the Seattle Seahawks, have a close one, then get blown out in another one. It's like, okay, we probably have, do we even have another year left of Murpham and Practical Jokers? Or they're like, maybe it's time to move on from Rich Gannon at the end of the season and potentially look into seeing who's interested in Kyler Murray.
Yeah. And the thing is with the Cardinals is like they have a winning streak. They look like they're the top of the world. Then they've lost the last three straight. And I mean, the Vikings game was close, but the Seahawks games weren't really that close, even if the scoreboard might deceive you. Like, now they have the Patriots and Panthers, which I think if they lose to either one of those teams, they're done. They're done. And I don't know whether or not they fire Rich Gannon or John I don't know if they fire him necessarily because I feel like they've made enough progress this year where maybe they want to run it back another year, sure. But he's given me more Dennis Allen vibes than he is the next genius head coach of the NFL. I just don't.
Who took the bus today?
Yeah, who took the bus today? Like, he gives me more of a Dennis Allen vibe than he does of a guy who's actually the future head coach for the Cardinals. So I feel like they'll probably run it back with him, but I don't believe in him.
Yeah, no, he's the Dennis Allen of Nick Sirianni's.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. But yeah, Seahawks take care of business. And then you know what game we haven't talked about yet, and this was the earliest game of the week to talk about. We didn't even talk about Thursday night football. One of the best Thursday night football games of the entire season. The Lions defying the odds yet again. We had initially, I mean, the game was pretty much the entire game. I feel like the Lions had control. They got up to a 10-0 lead, um, and then it was just second half, just exchanging blows. At one point, it was tied. At one point, the Packers had the lead, but then ultimately, it came down to Mr. Jake Bates, the master of Bates, kicking the field goal to win the game, and Lions just taking it done. The biggest controversy of this game was, and I feel like you and I see eye to eye with this. They are 4th and 1, and there's about 40 seconds left in the game. They can go for it and win the game, or they can kick the field goal and let the Packers have 40 seconds to march down the field. The media goes ballistic because Dan Campbell goes for it, which ultimately runs out the clock, and they kick the field goal and win it. In my mind, I loved the call because Jordan Love is a top 5, if not a top 10 quarterback in this league. They kick the field goal. There's a chance he scores a touchdown. They lose this game. Suddenly they fall out of the 1 seed. Instead, he goes for it. They kick the field goal. They own their destiny. They are the 12-1 team, and they avoid some sort of catastrophe with the Packers. What did you think about the call? Was it too ballsy? I don't know.
The this is the part that blows my mind. This is the same media that's like, if you're Tampa, how could you not go for two versus the Kansas City Chiefs and try and win the game and or lose it outright? I'm like, huh? Excuse me? Rewind the tape? What are we talking about? The same media that's like, you need to go for two versus the Kansas City Chiefs to win the game is now talking where you have a situation where it's 4th and inches, the best offensive line in the NFL, the best running back duo in the NFL, and then suddenly you're not supposed to go for it versus a weaker Packers front seven here. It's like it's absolutely mind blowing. So we go from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are foolish for not, you know, going for 2 and potentially losing the game to the Lions with the best offensive line in the league, best running back duo in the league, are foolish for going for it on 4th and inches and ensuring that they win the game. It's like, what are we talking about here? Of course, that was the right call. It's like, do you have to go out there and win the game versus your division rival? Dan Campbell is not going to back down, especially with the Packers. Jordan Love has played well for them, and Jordan Love was playing well in that game. So the Packers could have definitely, with 40 seconds, gotten down the field, gotten a field goal, and sent the game to overtime. Dan Campbell wasn't worth taking that risk. He's like, okay, if we're gonna go to overtime anyways, we might as well have it tied here. So why don't I go ahead and just go for it now? And then you end up winning that game. And this is a game where the Lions ended up losing the second game versus the Packers in Detroit last year on Thanksgiving. And we kind of saw the first game play out similarly the way it did last season, where the Lions just outright dominated them. Jordan Love looked kind of lost. He was playing like he just came back for an injury, which he had. But in this game, Jordan Love played one of the best games of his season. The Packers seemed like they were pulling out every stop, every play that they could to go out here and compete with the Lions, end up taking the lead. But the Lions, every time they needed to make a play, they made it. Every time Jared Goff needed to make a big throw in this game, he's made it. And I feel like people aren't talking about Jared Goff enough. Like what people like what Kirk Cousins is what people think Jared Goff is right now currently, where they're like, I don't know if they're not in a dome or have the 1 seed, I don't think they can make the Super Bowl. It's like, what are we talking about because of Jared Goff? Like, no, he's proven that he's not the same quarterback he was with the Rams. He's a completely different player, and he's the most valuable player in the league because he's grown with this Rams team, brought them up, and now they're the 1 seed. They only have one loss, and now they're consistently beating the Packers twice in a season. They've done that with Jared Goff, where they really hadn't done that throughout their franchise history, and it's kind of unheard of in the modern era that the Lions would beat the Packers. And now it's like, oh well, if they don't have a dome, they won't be able to go to the Super Bowl. It's like, okay. And if they play in Philadelphia, you think Jalen Hurts, who hasn't thrown for 250 passing yards since week 4, is going to do that? Like, give me a break. The Lions have the best offense in the league. They have the best running back duo in the league. And Jared Goff is playing the best football of his career this season, has around as many passing touchdowns, has more yards than Josh Allen. It's what are we doing here? Like, why are we freaking out about the Lions? Like, they're not supposed to be where they are at this point. The story of the Lions being turned around, it's like people poking holes at Dan Campbell, trying to not give him coach of the year. It's like it's an absolute travesty that people aren't embracing this team more than they already are, because they weren't supposed to be in the conference championship. The goal on the bucket list was making the playoffs, and they made the conference championship. And now they're probably going to be the number 1 seed, like when they should have been last year. Like, this is absolutely stellar stuff. And then they're like, "Oh, I don't think they should have run the ball on 4th down." Like, okay, then retire from sports media. Like, I'll take your job. Like, clearly you don't enjoy the sport of football. It's like, I wouldn't have gone for it. Like, okay, yeah, that's why you're not coaching in the NFL.
That's why you're the announcer. I feel like the reason why people aren't putting Jared Goff in the MVP is because of that one game he threw 5 picks. But if you break it off, if you disinclude that game, right? Going into the game, he threw 5 picks against the Texans a month ago. He had 16 touchdowns and 4 picks. He has that one game, he throws 5 picks, in which they still win despite his performance. Since then, 9 touchdowns, 1 pick. He's thrown for over 250 yards in 3 of those games. And outside of, I mean, he threw out pick in the Packers game, but he's been nuclear. If you remove that one game, he's 23 touchdowns to 5 picks. He has 25 touchdowns, 10 picks on the season, top 10 in passing yards, top 5 in touchdowns. QBR, same story. He's got a QBR of 110 this year. It's ridiculous. And I also think like the Lions, I think because they've always been bad, people still want them to be bad, but they're not. The Lions, like we've talked about many times, their running backs are great, their receivers are great. Even with their defense has been disintegrated this year with Alex Anzalone, we had Ali McNeil who fell down at one point in this game, Malcolm Rodriguez, Aiden Hutchinson, and
Hutchinson.
yet they're still playing pretty well despite the fact that all of these guys have been hurt. No matter who they have, credit to Aaron Glenn for how much they've had injuries on their defense. They've still been out there and they've still been able to plug people in and play well, beat the Packers. I think that them going for it on fourth down was gutsy for a couple of reasons. For one, you get better field position if you fail. Secondly, you control your own fate. We talked about it earlier. If they lose that game, they might not have the one seed. The Vikings are right down their neck. So are the Packers. So I have no problem with them going for it, especially if it was 4th and 6. Yeah, Dan Campbell, you're nuts. But it's 4th and 1. You have two of the best running backs in football. You have the best offensive line. And with 40 seconds left, you decide, yeah, we're going to win this game. We're not going to overtime. We're going to kick the field goal. And you did. So credit to the Lions. I think it shows guts.
Yeah, and they also didn't stop David Montgomery all game, so he can't pick up an inch. Like, really, he can't fall forward, even though Jared Goff had a bad snap, ends up falling over, still gets him the ball, and then also Packers fans are trying to argue. Actually, Jared Goff should have been down because his knee touched the ground. Like, do you not watch the NFL? That's never going to be called. Like, what are you talking about? Unless you go set up in victory formation and take a knee and give yourself up, like, the rule is a little bit muddy when you look at it, but like, that's never ever gonna be called, and the fact that you're that butthurt, like, no, you had your time where you were really good. You still are really good this season. Like, this is underachieving for you, not winning your division every year, but you're still gonna make the playoffs, probably win a playoff game, and then potentially have a chance for revenge versus the Lions this season. Either that or the Vikings will, but it's like, why are we trying to act like that was Jared Goff down? Like there's certain Packers fans trying to reach so far. It's like you lost and you lost to a better team. It's okay. But you have the Michael Jordan of Will Levis's as your quarterback. So
Oh,
that's
God.
something to be thankful for.
I think he deserves better than Will Levis, but Michael Jordan,
No,
all right,
the Michael
maybe.
Jordan of Will Levis's. So, that's high
Yeah,
praise. So you got to
it
equal it
is.
out a little bit. He's no
Sure.
goat, but
Hey, you know what? We have the Lions who are juggernauts, the Packers with juggernauts, the Vikings, but last game of the week, we got to talk about the Bears. The Bears in the first half had 4 yards. They had 4 yards in the first half, and they get absolutely abused against the 49ers. When I picked this game, I'm like, after Matt Eberflus is gone, maybe there's a little bit of juice for this Bears team. They go out and beat the Niners, who are brittle and beat up. Nope. Boy, was I fucking wrong. Boy, was I wrong. 4 yards in the first half for the Bears. And Caleb Williams, God rest his soul. I can just pray for the Bears. I don't know exactly where it went wrong for the Bears this season, but I I have no words. I have no words at all. I'm glad that they got some points on the board just for some dignity, but this game was over before it started. I mean, again, all I need to say about this game, four, four, four. I can literally put it on my hands how many yards they had. Look, I have more yards in my hands than the Bears had the entire first half. Like, come on. How much worse does it get for the Bears? If they don't lose in heartbreaking fashion, then they just lose in pathetic fashion. I don't know if they have an embarrassment kink. I don't know what it is. All I know, this Bears team, I, I, I can't. I have no words. That's all I can say.
Yeah, no, you have no words for the Bears. And just the fact that they get obliterated by a ragtag 49ers team who's dealing with injuries all over the place here. We all know the story with the 49ers this year. And then Brock Purdy having one of the best games of his season. And then just with the new coach with the Chicago Bears, it's like your parents left and you didn't even throw a party. You kind of just grabbed their shitty bottom shelf tequila and sat in your room and cried. That's kind of what it looked like, where it's like sometimes when the parents lose, we have a good game, have a party, then reality hits, parents come home, and you got to clean up your house and it sets in for you. But sometimes you just go into your room, grab the bottom shelf tequila, not even their finest, and then you just don't do anything with it. And that's kind of what the Bears were. And it was kind of pathetic, pretty sad to see sitting on their laurels. And this is just a team that's like, all right, needs a complete overhaul and identity, really needs a massive Dan Campbell personality to really exercise the demons. Now that Bill Belichick's going to college, like I feel like it has to be someone like a Mike Vrabel, someone that kind of caveat to fix the Chicago Bears and just fix the mentality of this team. Is like there's talent there and we've seen it, but we just need someone who has a strong personality to bring it out of them. Eberflus wasn't the answer. Whoever the backup coordinators are that are going to fill in and try and be the head coach, that's not going to be the answer here, clearly. And then you just get 4 yards versus the 49ers. And you want to talk about a time you just cringe every time you're talking about the Jaguars and Titans game where you literally cringed every time it flipped over to on red zone. Like anytime you saw offensive play, as few and far between as they were for the Chicago Bears, it's like, ouch. Did something just hit my eye? It's like, no, it didn't. They just flipped to the Bears playing offensive football, or what they try and claim is offensive football. Like, do they think they're playing rugby right now? Is it soccer? Is it golf? Like, no, it's football.
Ugh. And you know what's funny? To put some other light in here, we talk about how bad the Bears were, but let's not also forget about the 49ers where even when they win, they still lose. I mean, we have Christian McCaffrey who's done for the season. We have Jordan Mason who's done, who's at least out for this. They fill in Isaac Garendo, who played pretty well in this game, and he's hurt. Even the fourth string running back is falling down. If I'm the 49ers players, I just I just wrap myself in bubble wrap and pray every time I take a hit. Honest to God, because even when they have their fourth string running back, he comes in and he gets hurt. This it's like it's a weird. We're talking about the weird voodoo hex of the Chiefs, but I feel like the Swifties somehow tainted the 49ers too. Like they got in their path for the Super Bowl, and their curse is every time somebody touches them or breathes on them or even passes gas in their direction, they break. Something in their body breaks, and I don't know what's causing it, but pray for the 49ers players because we never wish injuries on anybody on this show. And for the 49ers, it just seems like even when they win, they lose a key person.
Yeah, no. The key player goes down here for the San Francisco 49ers. It's just tough to see. Unfortunately, we did predict it because following the Super Bowl loss last time versus the Kansas City Chiefs, half of their team got injured. We're like, yeah, that's a scenario that's going to play out this season. And it has. It's not something you want to be right out. It's something that is unfortunate, but it is something that's a reality of the NFL where a lot of teams can't handle back-to-back Super Bowl runs, which is why it's so incredible what teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Steelers, Packers, and Patriots were able to do with consistent greatness getting back to the Super Bowl. But in San Francisco, I don't know if it's just the vibe of California where everyone there is just kind of soft and getting injured when they have to play some extra games. I don't know.
It's a mystery. But that's all the games around the NFL in week 14. And without further ado, I mean, we talked about a whole bunch of things on the show, whether it was the hawk to a coin, whether it was previewing or recapping every game around the NFL. Before we conclude our show today and we talk about all the games for week 15 tomorrow and talk about the best teams, we got to talk about the worst of the worst. Teams that are the bottom of the barrel, absolute pathetic, should be defunct from the NFL potentially after this week. The worst top five according to the Brickyard. First, I'm going to talk about teams that are not included on this list for one reason or another. The Panthers. If Xavier Leggett caught a pass, they beat the Eagles, a team that is second seed in the NFC. They're giving me hope. Bryce Young, I believe in a thing called Bryce. Maybe, just maybe, There's something there in Carolina. They're not included on the worst top five, not this week. The Raiders, they are doing all the right things, which is all the wrong things. Tanking correctly. We're not going to see them win a random game that doesn't matter. They know that if they just keep sucking, they're going to get Shador Sanders. So they see the vision. They have a plan. So honestly, even though the Raiders are maybe the worst team, they're not included because they're doing the right things. And the other team that's not included on this list are the Patriots. The bye week, just for this week, maybe, hid the fact of how dorky Gerard Mayo is for just 1 week, 7 days, and maybe 84 hours. So I can excuse the Patriots this week simply for the fact that the bye week forgot just how bad Gerard Mayo is as a head coach. At number 5, how about them Dallas Cowboys? Botching the punt, muffing the punt, giving the ball back to the Bengals with a minute left, losing this game. And I think the worst thing for my dignity here is like Dallas, obviously, they haven't been very successful the last 30 years, but now you can add to a highlight reel of L's that Lisa Simpson and Bart Simpson fried up your defense. Ralph Wiggum, Chief Wiggum, Nelson even got wide on some of these plays. You're having Simpson's character scoring touchdowns against you. That's a tough one for Cowboys fans. Cowboys fans, it'll be okay. At number 4, how about a team we just talked about? A team that has been absolutely pathetic. 4 yards in the first half. Freddie, this is how many yards I have. I have more yards than the Bears had in the first half on my hand. But it gets worse. A fact that I forgot to mention, they've lost 7 consecutive games, and they have not won a Sunday road games since December 26th of 2021. Eberflus, in his 3 years there, never won a Sunday road game. So you can chalk it in for the rest of the year. If there's a Sunday road game for the Bears, they're not winning it because the Bears can't win anything at this point. The Bears, pathetic. They're at number 4. And then at number 3, how about none other than the New York Jets? Even when they win, even when they look like they're about to win, I know they're not going to win. I just have it in my brain. So at this point, what's the point? They're now at 15 consecutive years without a playoff appearance. Next year, your playoff drought is going to learn how to drive. That's how long it's been since the playoffs. 16 years. We have had not one, not two, not three, 4 elections in that time. We have to go all the way back to Mitt Romney before the Jets were even relevant in the league at this point. That's how bad the Jets have been. They haven't made the playoffs since 2010, since the iPod 4. The Jets, get back. What are we doing here? It's pretty bad to be a Jets fan at this point, but you know what? It could be worse. You could also be the New York Giants. Their New Year's resolution in 2024 was, how about we win a game at home? And just like every other resolution, it lasts 2 weeks. They beat the Eagles with Marcus Mariota last year on January 7th with Tyrod Taylor. But the world is different. They have not won a game since. They've lost 8 consecutive home games. You know how many things have changed in the NFL since the Giants last won at home? There was a rap beef of the ages with Drake versus Kendrick. We have a new president now. There's new memes. We had not one, but 2 Kanye West album rollouts. And we all know how long those take. And now we only have 2 more opportunities for them to win a home game if they ever do. They have a Baltimore game next week that they're probably not going to win. And then they have the Colts later this year. Chances are that their lack of winning at home is going to continue into 2025. So maybe New Year's resolution, don't suck. But nothing can be worse than the number 1 spot because even though 2 of these teams did not play, yes, that's right. For the second week in a row, the AFC South is the worst team according to the Brickyard. We have the Texans who lost to the bye week, the Colts who lost to the bye week, and then one of the worst games of the year with the Titans and Colts, 10-6. Give me a break. I'd rather gouge my eyes out. In fact, I did, and that's why I'm wearing my glasses today. So I have a solution for the AFC South. Blow it up. We'll put the Texans in the NFC East. We'll put the Jags in the AFC East, the Colts in the AFC North, and the Titans in the NFC North. And we can just forget that the AFC South even exists. because at this point, the Titans with Will Levis, it's a joke. The Colts with Tim Tebow is basically a joke at this point. The Texans suck, and the Jaguars don't even get me started. The worst team, according to the Brickyard, entering Week 15 is, of course, the entire AFC South. Literally all of them. They all suck. All of them deserve that spot.
All of them. They do.
Honest to God. I mean, am I wrong? Like the Texans, put the Texans with the Cowboys, put the Titans in the NFC North, put the Colts somewhere, doesn't matter where, put the Jaguars with the Dolphins where they are. Just get rid of the AFC South. AFC South is pathetic at this point. Just blow
Yeah,
it up.
no.
Get
Yeah,
rid of
no,
it.
it's time to remove the NFC, the AFC South. Maybe the expansion for the Texans was a mistake. Maybe we need to go to 32 team for from 32 to 30 teams when an entire division can suck this badly in the NFL, especially when you're looking at both of the South divisions struggling this year with Tampa Bay potentially going to make the playoffs and get blown out in the first round, and then the Texans probably going to make the playoffs and then get absolutely annihilated in the first round, or we may see something like Chargers and Texans or Chargers Ravens in the first round, which would be eye gougingly painful. It's going to be tough. And the AFC South, it's not like they haven't tried to earn it. And that game on Sunday was just a vindication 16 total points. The Panthers outscored the Titans and the Jaguars and only scored 16 points.
It's the world we live in. When the Panthers are outscoring the AFC South, something needs to be done. In the Brickyard, we're here to revise and remake the NFL great, which is what we're going to do tomorrow night when we preview Week 15 in the NFL. We have another month left before the playoffs, and we're going to be here to break it all down, talk about the best of the best, not the worst of the worst. So you're not going to want to miss it tomorrow night when we go live.
Yeah, no, not going to want to miss that here. And we'll be here to preview all of the games. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you're tuning into the NBA in season tournament because no one asked for it and no one will ask for more. But most importantly,
Stay
stay brick.
break. Beautiful.
Uh,
Oh,
what a
God, see you
week.
again.
So many painful games.
So many painful. We broke it